enough pay rise, and he decides to take revenge on the organization. These are also types of attacks we've seen. Attacking is not that difficult. Tools are available, as I said, and instructions are widely available. Now, if we're looking at the evolution, where did this all begin? Initially, we had individual packets that could be sent to operating systems. These packets then caused the operating system itself to crash or freeze or start communicating, sending packets back to itself, freezing up communications with any other valid requests. These type of fixes, these type of issues have been fixed quite a long time ago. Every now and then things still pop up, but the operating system vendors usually respond very quickly on these kind of issues, and patches are provided. Now, what's happening is that the DOS attacks are now attacking or targeting the applications themselves instead of the operating systems. Web services are a common target for attacks because most of the services provided today on the internet are on a web-based platform. What happens normally first is that the attackers do reconnaissance, looking at what type of requests cause the biggest delays in responses from the services, trying to figure out what is the way to actually execute the attack. We have seen, for example, in the past, slow loris attacks, which cause a web server to become unavailable, even from a single system is capable of bringing this service down. Now, when we're talking about an application level DDoS attacks, a traditional firewall and IPS combination would not be able to efficiently detect these. You need to have an understanding of the actual application, web application. You need to be able to operate on layer 7 to be able to detect what traffic really is traffic coming from an attacker and what traffic is coming from a valid user. Otherwise, we might have a situation where services go out. This obviously will cause reputation loss, financial loss. Imagine a situation where a payment portal for a mobile operator gets attacked and brought down. The mobile operator would need to react first of all to stop the attack or prevent the attack from bringing the service down. But on the other side, what happens if the service outage continues? They also have to remember that they need to make sure that their customers would not get disrupted or disconnected because they haven't been paying their bills. You cannot disconnect them because a non-payment, your services are down at the moment. So how do we actually protect and mitigate these type of layer 7 DDoS attacks? Now, with Fortinet, we have a product called FortiWeb, which is in fact a web application firewall, but it also comes with DDoS protection. And what we can do is we can work both on network and application level to protect the services. We can identify what type of packets or which packets are coming from an attacker, which packets are coming from a valid user who are just trying to access the service. And what we can then do is we can specifically and methodically block only the attacking packets. Now, first problem we might have is that the attacker isn't coming from an IP which belongs to him only. Because of mobile environments, because of NAT, we most likely will see a situation where the attacker is behind a public IP that also is shared by a large number of other users. So what we need to do is we need to be able to differentiate which one is the attacker's data and which one is the actual user's data. And how do we do this? With FortiWeb, when we see the initial connection, when we see the first packets coming from any source, we start providing cookies in response. So the response that goes back to the client is including a cookie. Now, when the client then replies again, before the session timeout, when the client replies again, we check whether this cookie is present. If the cookie is not present, we assume that this is a different client. It is trying to mimic the original connection. We drop the request. If we then see the cookie, we can see that we can assume that the actual request, the reply is coming from the same client. Each client would then be assigned with their dedicated cookies, and we can now identify different users or different sources, even if they're all behind the same IP address. Now that we can then identify these users and sources, we can start limiting. We can start looking at what type of number of TCP connections we allow per user session. Now, when we see a large number of sessions coming from one source, this is normally a bot trying to consume memory, CPU on the service, bringing it down. Now, we can enforce specific limits which are detected as floods. So once a client or a user goes above the certain limit, we will start blocking any new connections. Normal users wouldn't be affected because you wouldn't see massive numbers of sessions coming from them. This is not normal typical browsing. What we can further do is we can actually monitor individual URLs, and we can look at URLs plus user sessions. So again, if we see an excessive number of sessions coming, this is normally an indication of somebody trying to bring the service down. And this allows us to again protect specific URLs that might be, even as the service provider, we might know already that this type of access requires quite a large number of CPU calculations when anybody accesses it. So this allows us to protect specific URLs as well. Now, we might have cases where cookies are not supported by all the clients. When you don't have the cookies included, we don't have a means to identify individual users. And in this case, what we can do is we can also further look at the IP headers and the identification fields. When you have a situation where you have multiple different types of information seen behind one IP, it is an indication that this is a shared IP. If you have only one type of IDs available, this means it is an individual IP, and we can assume that there are not more than one system behind it. And now we have the capability then to detect shared as well as individual IP addresses or standalone IP addresses. And for each of these, we can again set different values based on HTTP requests. How many HTTP requests we allow from shared IP addresses? This should be normally higher than from a standalone IPs. Normally the attacks are coming from botnets. We don't really see attacks coming from browsers. You don't see an attacker who is refreshing the browser, pressing F5 to attack a web service. The attacks are coming from dedicated tools that generate packets and send them forward, not from the browsers. Now, how do we then identify whether it really is a browser or a bot that is generating this traffic? What we have is a couple of different options. We could look at the user agent fields. We could identify what type of user agent is being used. The problem here is that the botnet herders are already aware of this, and they can easily modify and change these values. So that wouldn't really help us much. So the method to actually detect whether we have a bot or a real browser sending us traffic is quite simple. What we do is we return a JavaScript element back to the client when they connect, and we expect that this script gets executed on the client browser, and whatever the result of the script is gets sent back to the FortiWeb. If this happens, we can be sure that it is a real browser. If it is a bot, the bot would not have the capabilities to execute JavaScript. It would not be able to respond back to the FortiWeb. So as long as we have a real browser, the JavaScript gets executed, and the FortiWeb will learn that we have a client which is a real browser. For normal users, they wouldn't see this. This is not something that they would see. There wouldn't be any pop-up windows. There wouldn't be any buttons to click, accept or reject. This would not disrupt or change their normal browsing behavior in any way. Now, what we can then do is we can have a look at rate limiting, because we can identify at a certain stage which clients are bots and which clients